I'm Amy Cherry. This local news is a service of Flagler County's Toyota dealer, Beaver Toyota, here to wow ya. A man's body is found in the ashes of a brush fire that broke out at a homeless encampment in Palm Coast. Firefighters were called to the area behind the Superwash car wash on the 100 block of Cypress Point Parkway Sunday night. They say the fire, which spanned 50 feet on each side at one point, was doused. Then they made a gruesome discovery, a man's body in the ashes. Deputies haven't identified the man, and it's unclear whether he's homeless. An autopsy will determine his cause of death. A couple is arrested after Flagler County deputies say they were running a drug house. Tony Magoo reports.
A narcotics search warrant was served by the Special Investigations Unit of the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. It was served at 104 South Anderson Street in Bunnell. During the past year, the Sheriff's Office and Bunnell PD have made over 40 visits to this address for assault and battery, domestic disturbances, and warrant services. Area residents were also complaining about activities at that address. Here's Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley.
So I want to thank the community. Without your tips, we would not have known what was going on at this residence.
So undercover operations were able to confirm the sale of narcotics. As a result of the search warrant, 2 arrests were made. Nina Holly, 36, Michael Boyd, 38. This is not Boyd or Holly's first encounter with law enforcement. Both were taken to the Sheriff Perry Hall inmate detention facility. Holly is being charged with sale of a controlled substance and other drug-related charges. She is being held on a $6,000 bond. Boyd was charged with possession of drug paraphernalia and is being held on a $500 bond. For Flagler's Morning News, I'm Tony Magoo.
The balance between local and state control over rental properties will be shifted under legislation that's now headed for the floor of the Florida State House. John Arking has the details.
The House Commerce Committee last Thursday approved HB 1011, which would require Airbnb and similar online platforms to collect and remit taxes on vacation rental properties, ensure that only those rentals that are properly licensed are being advertised, and provide specific information to the state about the rentals. But the bargain to get those concessions is to more or less turn over vacation rental regulations to the state. Republican State Representative Paul Renner was instrumental in getting the current law passed, giving that authority to local governments, but says it's a real balancing act to make sure everyone's interests are fairly represented.
What we're trying to do is carefully balance the private property rights of not just the owners who have a right to rent their property, but also the neighbors who have a right to some sense of community. And so there are people that are vocally extreme on both sides of this issue, and I'm kind of squarely in the middle of it. And I think we just need a reasonable, balanced approach that makes sure that we're regulating it in an appropriate way that balances all those rights out. And right now, I think that we've hit on a pretty good compromise.
At the local level, Flagler County Commissioner Dave Sullivan says they are keeping a close eye on the issue and hoping that local control is not lost in the shuffle.
It's a very difficult issue for us. We'd like to keep our ordinance that we put into effect in 2016. I'm not sure where we are on that, but Paul did have some encouraging things to say, for instance, how the homeowners associations will be protected, that kind of thing.
While the House plan is now headed to the floor for a vote, a Senate version needs to pass one final committee before a full vote in that chamber. From the WNZF Newsroom, I'm John Arkin.
There's a special meeting happening today as the Flagler County School Board gets one step closer to selecting the district's next superintendent. This marks the first time the board will meet to consider applicants and narrow down the list of 9 candidates recommended by a citizens advisory group to a handful of finalists. On the short list are some known candidates, including former Flagler Schools Assistant Superintendent Vernon Orndorff, who moved to Texas to be a superintendent, Kathy Middlestadt, a deputy superintendent in St. Johns County, and current Flagler County School Board member Colleen Conklin. A replacement for outgoing Superintendent Jim Tager will hopefully be named by mid-March.
Where will we get the sand for the Flagler Beach Renourishment Project?
Flagler County engineer Faith Alcatib says it comes from about 10 miles offshore.
Dredge hopper, bringing the sand almost 10 miles offshore, then bumping it into beach.
Alcatib said that the dredged sand would not be the coquina sand that we're used to.
And basically the color of the sand, I do understand our beach is unique, the color, the coquina sands, but eventually it will blend, it will mix up. But at this time, this is our only option to have it. It's going to be gray color.
Alcatib said that there would be 500,000 cubic yards of sand dredged and laid on the 2.6-mile stretch of Flagler Beach that the Army Corps of Engineers is working on. She said it would be a 24/7 operation and that visitors could watch the work going on so long as they stayed outside the work zones. To hear more about the Renourishment program, download the Flagler radio app and then go to the Free for All Friday podcast. Tomorrow, Commissioner Dave Sullivan talks about how the project is being done in pieces so the beach remains open. From the WNZF Newsroom, I'm Deb Albertson.
And now you're up to date on Flagler's morning news. I'm Amy Cherry.